Welcome back to the arcade. Well, I know a lot of people have been waiting for my videos on the Bally Midway test cards, where you can test the pattern board and the RAM cards for the games like Gorf and Wizard of War and all the others. But before I can set that up, I have to figure out how to set it up. And one thing you need is you got to have a card cage. And I could just use the one that's in my game, but it's a little hard being in the cabinet. I would have to probably unbolt it and undo the wiring harness and move it out of the back of the cabinet so I could get to it. And I could do that, but I didn't see a need because I have plenty of extra card rack cages. So I went out to the garage and I dug this one out, and it is filthy, but that's what we're going to have to do, is clean it up. So let me get the camera off the tripod and I'll give you a close-up and show you just what this thing looks like. Okay, well, here's what it looks like. It's probably been out in the garage, just laying open on a shelf, probably for the last 15, maybe even 20 years. The aluminum has got a little corrosion on it. These pins down here where you connect the power, yeah, they're sort of crusty, so I'll probably have to replace those. So, yeah, and doesn't look like any corrosive damage from batteries, so more than likely this was either a Gorf or a Wizard of War. I have no idea which one it was, but because I believe I did at one time buy one that had Wizard of War marked on it, but mostly, since I only have a Gorf, usually Gorf boards is what I was buying. These copper strips here, which are grounds for the board where the boards slide down into, they look fairly good, although they're corroded and got a little green on them. So how are we going to deal with those? Well, they're riveted on to the aluminum housing here. So I think the best way to deal with this is to go ahead and take it apart. It does have screws in it where this whole thing will come apart. You can take the board off the bottom of it. 4 screws is sandwiched in between the mounting pieces here. This one piece right here is bent, so we'll straighten that back up. So yeah, I think we'll just go ahead and take this thing apart. That way I can put it in a container, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this an acid bath and try to clean these copper strips up, and also clean the edge connectors in the bottom board there. So I even got spiders in it. Boy, I thought they were all dead. That one there looks alive. Okay, so let me take this thing apart, clean it up. We'll take it outside, rinse it off with some water, maybe a little simple green if I can find some around here. And then we'll throw it in some toilet bowl cleaner, the Works, which happens to be probably the only toilet bowl cleaner on the market that has the greatest content of acid in it. So yeah, let me go ahead and take this apart. Okay, these all appear to be 1/4 inch, I would say. Well, let's pull one out and see. I don't know if it's sheet metal screws. I would think it would be self-tapping sheet metal screws, but even though they're in aluminum. Yeah, they're pretty much, I don't know if they're self-tapping, but yeah, I believe they might be. At any rate, that's what's holding it together. Well, it's very nice it comes apart. Definitely will make it a little easier to clean. And all these screws look to be the same, so we don't have to worry about keeping them separated. They got a little bit of rust on those in places, so hopefully the get that spider web off of me. Hopefully the toilet bowl cleaner, the acid, will clean the rust off of those too, what little is on them. It's not that much, but a little bit. Okay, let's see. I think next I'll go ahead and take the bottom board off. Okay, just make a note. The screws that go in the 4-foot of board are longer than the 1-foot of side panels. Okay, so we do have to kind of make a little mental note on that. Of course, I can always go back and watch this video putting it back together if I forget, but I shouldn't forget that. That'll be pretty easy to remember. I really ought to get my power screwdriver for this, but already halfway there now, so. I got one more right here, so it's 5 holding the board on here. But it appears to be the same long one. All right. I have to look and make sure all these connections here, all the little fingers on the edge connector, see if they look like they're intact and not bent and mangled. So I'll take a look at that real quick here in a little bit. All right. And these are the shorties. Okay, that's one side panel with the copper ground strips. Spider! He's getting away. Ah, hate spiders. Okay, these are a little different. These have washers on them. So this is the one that's in the little step down. That's the first ones that had washers on them. Why that is, I don't know. It might have something to do with the final adjustment, because when you put this back together, it would help to have this board lined up perfectly with the slots. So I figure I'll have to take a couple boards and push down in here and get it all lined up with the boards in place before you tighten the screws back up. That way you have everything perfectly aligned, because if it's a little bit out of alignment and you try to push the board down, the board's not going to line up properly. And I don't know how much leeway in alignment there is to these, but I'm sure there's a little bit, because they do have slots in them, and that's probably why this one had the washers, because it's got a slot so that you can make an adjustment for the width of the board, so that the boards, when you slide them in, you know, they slide in properly without binding or whatever. And of course we got the two little slots here for the RAM cards, and this one. Okay. So we now have it all apart. Okay, so now we can take it outside and give it a good bath in the works. Well, let's get started with the cleaning process. What I'm going to use is, I have some mean green. Went and got that from the Dollar General. Got some isopropyl alcohol, some distilled water, and my favorite cleaner, the Works. Also works good in the toilet bowl. Okay, well, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take our parts here. Got the cage all disassembled, and we're just going to soak it in some simple green and try to get some of the dirt off of it. First, I think I'm going to do the metal pieces. So I'm just going to give them a squirt. They are real filthy. So we're going to just coat them in simple green. Actually, mean green. They didn't have simple green. I usually use simple green, but I hear mean green is basically the same stuff. And I believe this big bottle here at the Dollar General was like $2. So we'll see how it works. If it doesn't seem to be as good, I won't buy any more. We definitely got some age-old dirt. Last but not least, the PC board. I want to get it down into the card slots where the contacts for the edge connector are in there. A bunch of them. And so I'm going to use a bristle paintbrush to try to get in there and clean the dirt out, and then hopefully the toilet bowl cleaner will clean any corrosion. And then once we get done with all that, we'll take it back inside. We're going to change this connector out because it's corroded pretty bad. Put a new connector on it, and we'll put some deoxide in there and plug the cards in and out a few times because those cards have gold-plated pins. I really should have got some Tarnex and tried that, but I didn't. So, all right, I'm just going to lay this over to the side because I don't want to get any more dirt into that than I have to, because these things are just covered in dirt. All right, right now I'm not wearing any gloves because Mean Green is just a detergent cleaner, so I'm not too worried about that. But when we go to the works, that has diluted hydrochloric acid in it, so I'll be putting gloves on then, so not to worry. Okay, well, you get the idea. I'm going to do this to all the parts, clean them up real good, and be back when I'm ready to rinse. There's no need in you watching me clean all these parts. Okay, well, I've already rinsed out the tub, and I put all the parts back in here. So now I'm just going to give them a quick rinse with the water hose here. I'm just going to put them back over here out the way. Old Mean Green did a pretty good job. Of course, as you can see, it still has some, that's corrosion. All these little places right here. Now the works might get that off and it might not. We'll just have to wait and see. But the Mean Green is just to get the dirt off. And as you can see on the outside of the cage is where you got most of your corrosion. Alright, now I already cleaned this with Mean Green too. So, gonna try to use the water pressure here to get anything that might be down in them cracks dislodged. Because not only dirt can get in there, since these slots are up like this in the card cage, where anything falling down in there can get in them. Now, if they had cards in them, you're not going to get anything in them, but this cage was empty for probably 15, 20 years. Even though it was probably laying on the side, I believe, most of the time, still could have got some crap in there. So just want to try to make sure we flush anything out that may be in there. And then, of course, before I put it together, I'll take my magnifying visor and I'll look down each one of the slots real good to make sure all the pins are there and make sure they're not really corroded. And we'll go from there. Now, I do have 3 more cages with board sets in them, so if I have to, I can rob one of these out of that, but somebody makes a reproduction of this. I don't remember who. I believe it might be Vector Labs, and you can get it through, oh gosh, I can't think of their website right now. Highscoresaves.com. I think you can buy them there if they have them in stock. A lot of his stuff from time to time are out of stock, so it's kind of hard sometimes, but that would be my suggestion if you need one. So Okay, let me go ahead and throw out the bath water. Now what we're going to do is we're going to get the works out. Now, I don't know how long we can leave it in here without doing damage to these copper strips these are the copper strips that the edge of the board goes down that makes the ground connection to the edge of the board. And they have little fingers on here which are like wipers that wipe the board. So we need to clean those real good, and I don't want to eat the copper away, so I'm going to have to keep a close eye and see what happens here. Now, kind of a guide to see, I got a shiny new penny, I got a sort of medium crud penny, and I got a real cruddy penny. So I'm going to throw them in there, and just so we can kind of gauge by how the pennies look as to what might be happening to that copper. So don't know if that's going to work, but we're going to give it a try. And I got my paper towels soaking wet. I have to get some new ones. Okay. Always something. All right, time to put on the gloves. Okay. Well, got my first part in here. Let's throw some works in there. Alright, we'll just lay this over here for the time being. Actually, those copper strips look like they're turning copper already, so I believe this stuff is going to work pretty fast. The trick is not to leave it in too long because you don't want it to eat the copper away, so that's why I got to kind of keep an eye on it here. Try not to cut a hole in my gloves because I don't want that stuff on my skin, because this metal is sharp. Now, in case you didn't know it, I was in the trucking business for over 30 years, and big trucks that have aluminum wheels and aluminum bodies, aluminum beds, aluminum gas tanks. That's what they use to clean the aluminum. They use a special formula, it's a mild acid and they actually acid wash the aluminum, and it cleans the aluminum, but it has a tendency to turn aluminum white. So if you ever see a bed of a truck, like a dump truck or anything that's got diamond plating on it or whatever, it's got some age to it, and they've washed it with an acid, it'll be white unless they take the time to polish it. You have to use a polishing wheel and polishing compound, and you can bring the shine back out in it, but pretty sure you can, because they polish up wheels, aluminum wheels, that way. And of course, years ago it used to be all done by hand, and it was tedious, tiring, and long work. Nowadays they got automatic equipment that does it pretty much automatic, like a polishing wheel that you just, a bunch of wheels you just roll right up to the truck, push it right into the wheel, and it'll I don't need that, I want the works, and it'll polish the wheel for you, basically. So yeah. Oh yeah, this one is brightening up already. I don't know if you can see that in the camera, but yes, looking pretty good here. And I'm not worried about really cleaning this up so much as just getting the copper contact clean for the boards, so you have a good ground on the boards. And especially that the edge connectors on that bottom board is very important to have those clean. The rest of it I could have left dirty, but you know, while you're at it, you might as well clean it up as good as you can. So all right, we got too many more pieces left. These don't have any copper in them, they're just side end covers. They're not too bad anyway, so probably after I do this, if I wanted to clean that aluminum up, imagine a little Scotch-Brite would probably do the trick, or even steel wool. But I don't like using steel wool around electronic stuff, because that steel wool gets down in those edge connector contacts. Boy, that'd be a mess. So yeah, stay away from any metal products like steel wool, because steel wool sheds and makes a mess. Yeah, that would be a no-no. I made a mistake one time years ago. I was working on a pinball machine, and a PIA chip was bad, and it was soldered into the board. And I had the bright idea. Back then I didn't have any equipment. All I had was solder wick and a Radio Shack soldering iron, little piece of junk. And I was trying to get this PIA chip out of the board, and I didn't have little side cutters where normally if it don't have a desoldering tool or whatever, you just take your little side cutters and clip each leg, you know, and then unsolder each leg individually. Well, I didn't have any little side cutters that would clip the legs, so I had a bright idea. I took my Dremel with a cutting wheel, and I said, I'll just zip it right on down the side of the chip and cut the legs off. Yeah. Can you imagine what happened? All those little microscopic chips from the legs that I cut off covered the board. And that stuff will get underneath chips, and oh, it was a nightmare. It took me a long time to clean that board up and to, you know, get it back to 100% clean again. So, yeah. Anytime you're working around boards, do not do any grinding of anything, any metal. You got to keep it clean, because all that metal will do is get under everything and cause shorts all over the place. And that's how I know. So there's a little tip for you newbies. Sometimes a bright idea seems bright until you go through with it. And then you wonder why. But that's the way it goes. Okay. Now we let those kind of soak. And I'll go ahead and clean the edge connector board, or the back plane, I guess they call them. Once we get this clean too, we're also going to look at all these connections on the back here and see if any of them look like they're cold solder joints. I hope I don't have to reflow those, because there's a bunch of them, but you got to do what you got to do. But I'm hoping they're going to be okay and I won't have to mess with them. So we'll just have to wait and see how it goes. All right. Now, hope I'm not going to ruin these contacts in this thing with this acid. But if I do, if I have to, I'll get another one. Or if in the meantime, I can use one out of my other 3 board sets. So I'm not too worried. This is kind of an experiment. It's the first time I've cleaned one of these edge card connectors like this. Usually I just blow some air down in them and put a little deoxit down in them. You know, just kind of give them a lick and a promise. But this looks so dirty, I just figured I had to do something. So all right, I'm gonna go ahead and just dump the whole thing in here and let it get a good soaking. The works is pretty cheap too. They sell it over at the Dollar General, so if you want to buy any, you can get that at Dollar General. I don't think that was much more than $2 either. Might have been a little more, but it's pretty relatively cheap. Most anything like that is pretty cheap at the Dollar General anyway, so. But that's a pretty good deal on that mean green. So yeah, okay. At this point, anything I do here should be a help, because like I say, this thing was filthy. But we're all going to change those connectors on that board there, because they do look real bad, and I can tell somebody had tried to reflow the connectors on the back of the board, and I hope they didn't mess the copper traces up too bad, because they look like they clumped it on. Like one time I was at a construction company. They did some damage to one of my trucks, and they had to fix it because they caused damage, and I had done some previous welding, and I'm not a welder. And the guy, I believe he was Greek or Italian or something. He had an accent. He looked at it and said, "Who did this chicken shit welding?" I said, "Well, I reckon I'll have to own up to that one." So that's what this looks like. It's just round globs, and it reminded me of that guy years ago. Thought I want to know who did this chicken shit welding. Ah, boy. Yeah. Memories. Okay, we're going to let that sit a while. Also, in the meantime, I'm going to throw these screws in here. I forgot about those. Yeah. Okay, we're going to let that sit for a while. And come back and see what it looks like. Okay, well, I done washed the toilet bowl cleaner off of everything. Something tells me maybe I should have left it in there a little bit longer. I left it in there about 20 minutes, but I didn't want to overdo it. But it seems like the copper pennies came a little cleaner, and the metal parts came out with like a black oxide on them. And as you can see, when you wipe it, the black oxide is coming off. So I guess that's dirt that the toilet bowl cleaner has loosened up on the aluminum, or maybe it's some type of chemical reaction between the copper and the aluminum. I don't know. So I'm going to go ahead and wash these off again with some more mean green and see if it'll bring that stuff off. And hopefully it will. And maybe even it'll come off of the copper, make the copper a little cleaner. But if not, we'll take care of that. I got an idea of how to clean the surface up a little bit. And I always do this at the edge of dark, so it's starting to get dark on me. So I'm going to try to hurry up and get this done. Okay, well, you get the idea. I'm gonna go ahead and clean all these up. I'll be back when I'm finished. Okay, last step is I'm gonna hose the board down here with some isopropyl alcohol. Actually, I should have run some water over it, some distilled water. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Go ahead and give it a bath in distilled water. Get any minerals out left over from washing it with regular house water. All right, that should be good. And now, dose it down with some alcohol. And just let all that water dry and dissipate. I'm going to take these other parts and just give them a rinse in the water. And no need to spray these with alcohol. I'm just going to put these back in the box. Let them dry naturally. If I want to shine the aluminum up, I can always get some Mother's wheel polish or something like that, but hey, it's going to be a test bed for a video game, so you know. What would be the point? Okay, that should finish it up. So once all this stuff dries, we'll go back in the game room, sit down at the table and look it over and start reassembling. All right, well, it's been a day later, and I went ahead and got the parts out that we cleaned, and I tell you, the aluminum when it dried, it sort of looks like it's even corroded more. I don't know what the deal is with that. We'll try to clean that up a little bit, but some of the copper wipers here came out pretty good. I haven't touched them with anything, but we just washed it with the acid wash. Now these right here, I hit them with a wire brush. These three right here. and these three I haven't yet. So what I did was I went to Harbor Freight, my favorite cheap China tool store, and I bought me some of these brass wheels for my Dremel. They're real soft, so I don't think they'll harm anything. So what I'm going to try to do is see if I can clean these up a little bit and get them to shine a little bit more. And I'm really only worried about where they make contact with the board. Now this one right here is spread apart already, kind of wide, so I'm going to have to bend those back. The wire brush didn't do it. Okay, well that shined them up pretty good, so I think once I bend the ones back that's been spread, I don't know what might have spread those. I think they're already like that. But I'm going to take my time and just bend them back. And I'm going to go ahead and do these off camera. And when I get those all done, we'll be back. Okay, I'm going to try to show you how I'm bending these tabs back. If I can get, yeah, here we are. So the board slides right in the middle, and it's got a little wiper on each side. So what I'm going to do is just take, you can take a little pair of needle nose or whatever, and get it right where the bend is, and you just give it a little bend that way. Then you grab the other side and you give it a little bend that way. Sometimes these little sides are bent a little bit, so you have to straighten them up. And there you have it. They're back together. Now the board, when it goes down, we'll push them apart. They don't have to be touching. These are touching a little bit, but that's fine. You can see that they're curved out on the back side so that when you pull the board back out, they won't scratch or dig into the board. So let's see if I can do another one here. This one is a little bent out too, so we'll straighten that back. And that's basically all it is to it. And you can see they shined up real nice. So I'm going to go back, and there's a few more I got to do. Some of them are okay, some of them I don't have to mess with, but some of them need a little tweaking. So yeah, we'll just go ahead and go through all of them and get that taken care of. All right, now let's start on the board here. I'm going to replace these header pins, even though they were real corroded and they're still corroded, but they cleaned up when they could probably be sanded down with the fiberglass pen. It would probably be okay, but I think I'm gonna go ahead and change them anyway. And what I usually change them with, I get these universal header pins and get them at a long length. This is one I've already broke off of, but they're made to where you can just take how many pins you need and just break them off, or take a pair of side cutters and cut them off. So that's what we're going to do. All right, this is a 9-pin, and it's got a key, so one of them's missing here. So what I'll do is we'll just get our 9 pins here, and I'm going to take these side cutters and just nip them right off, just like that. So now we got our 9-pin connector, and let's see, pin number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is the key, so we got to take number 6 out. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we got to take this one out. I'll grab onto it here, and I might be able to pull it right out. Nope, I broke it. Okay. Next time I'll heat it up and pull it out. Alright, well this one's only, we're going to take 1 pin off, so. Alright. So this is the one we got to take out right there. And what I'll do is I'll heat up that pin. Might have to put some solder on it, I don't know. Ah, there we go. Just a little bit of heat and push it right off. Okay, now we got our pin, header pins. Alright, let's go ahead and desolder this. First I'm going to add a little solder to this because it was kind of corroded. And they piled it up pretty thick here, so it'd be a lot easier. Flow some new solder on it. It'll come unsoldered a lot easier. I can get it in a frame here for you. Okay, I thought I had my desoldering station plugged in, but evidently not. Gotta let it warm up. Be right back. Okay, got it all fired up now. Let's see if it's hot enough. And I wonder if I got a big enough tip on here. Yeah, just barely. All right, let's see if I can get it with that. Might have to put my bigger tip on here, I don't know. Not much room to suck the solder bomb. I believe it's getting them though. There's so much solder on these, I don't know if and this is a ground plane. This is a ground. I've turned the temperature up on it. Whenever you got a ground plane like that, you have to turn the temperature up or add something to it. Ooh, that's hot. Okay, there we go. That's off. Board looks good. Put the new ones down. All right. Let's see if this is going to hold it in place for me. What I'll do is I'll solder one kind of in the middle, and then I'll check it, and I can straighten it up if it needs to be. Let's see. This is going to be fine. A little crooked, so what I'll do is heat it up and hold it down in place until it cools down. Still don't look flat. Alright, let me do it this way. Okay, Got it good and flat that time. Let's go ahead and solder it. These two pins here tied together, that's the 5-volt line. Okay, these three are on that ground plane. So that's going to soak up a lot of heat. Okay, that's gonna do it. Now we have a new header pin on. And solder joints look good. Now, the only thing I'm still concerned about are these pins. Now, I've looked at all of them, and all of them look like they're good. They're not bent out of shape or anything. They all look clean. They cleaned out real good. And they do look like they are gold-plated pins in there. So that would make sense because the boards have gold-plated fingers that go in here. So I'm wondering if I would be better off to put some Tarnex in here, but I don't have any. I think I'll go ahead and just put the cage together, and then I'll squirt some deoxit in here, and then we'll plug the boards in and out a few times. And then I'll put a set of boards in the cage, and I'll plug it into the wiring harness in the cabinet, and we'll see if the game works fine. If the game works, then I'm not going to worry about it. But if we do have problems, the only thing it could be would be that some of these fingers in this edge connectors here, you know, might be a little tarnished. But I'm not going to worry too much about that right now. I did put the cage together off camera. It was like a jigsaw puzzle trying to figure out how it goes back, but it didn't take long. And yeah, those copper tracks there, they turned out real good, so all that should be good. So what I have to do now is just put the board back on the bottom here, and let's see, I believe it goes like this. And I've left all the screws loose so I can adjust it, because I'm going to have to put boards in here, and with the boards in place, then you can kind of get the cage, you know, in there in the right position, and then put the screws and tighten the screws up. So if you don't, the thing could be a little off kilter, and it'd be hard putting the boards in and out. So all right, and here are the screws. It's 5 screws. One of them goes in here, and the other 4, the mount gets screwed onto it. So and this might not be too hard to line up, so we'll see. Let's see. Yeah, they were like that. Or were they? One of them was bent and I straightened it up. Not the best job in the world, but better than I thought. Which one is? Oh, this one right here was the one that was all bent. I could take a hammer to it on an anvil or a flat surface and straighten it up a little more, but I think it'll be okay for what we're going to do with it. Let's see, are these both symmetrical? Yes, so it doesn't matter which side to go on. All right, like I say, it goes on here. Got to line the screw hole up. Okay, like I say, just snug, not tight. Okay, there we have it. It's back together. Alright, now I got to get a board set together and stick them in there and see if we can't get them lined up. Okay, we got the cage here. Got a stack of boards. So I'm going to take some good old deoxit and I'm going to spray in the card slots down here. And this can has been giving me problems. It has a leak. So I don't know. I think I'd be better off not using the applicator straw. Whenever I use the applicator straw, it always leaks inside here and runs out in here. I don't know what the deal is. So I think I'm just going to use it without it. All right. All right, so let's go ahead and see if the cards are going to go in. And this should help to line everything up so that we can get the cage good and tight and tighten up the screws on it here. Now, in case you didn't know this, these boards, the big boards, the little boards don't. The little boards is easy to know which way they go because it has the smaller card edge on it and it only goes one way. This board, however, is symmetrical, so it will go both ways. But it does have this little slot here, which is supposed to have a key in here. Now, there are some that don't have keys. This particular one has, I think it's got a key in two of them, but the other two, the key doesn't look like they're in there, so I don't know. But since I see the key is in this end right here, so that means the boards go in like this. But one way to tell is look at your smaller boards there. See which way the components are. All the components always go in the same direction. So if you keep to that, then you should be good to go. Okay. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. This one don't want to go in here. There it goes. And like I say, we're only doing this because I took the cage apart. You shouldn't have this problem if you don't take the cage apart. But this cage was so dirty that I just had to take it apart. Okay. We got them all in. Let's see. Take my nut driver here. First thing we need to do is get where the slots go in, where the boards go in, the slots. We need to make sure that the slots are not too tight in and not too far apart. So, as you know, these boards are, the cage has slots in it here, so you can just a little bit either pull them out or push them in. So what we need to do is push this one in because this side is fixed. So that's in pretty good. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to tighten this middle one up on the end here. And that feels good and tight. Go ahead and tighten this one up. I don't want to tighten them too tight because these are like sheet metal screws, and if you over tighten them you can strip them out. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and just tighten these right here on. Now when we actually use this cage for the test fixture, we might have to take one or both of these off. I'm not sure. We'll find out after we test fit the boards in here and get them in the correct order. The two test boards, which will be coming up in the next video. That's what we're getting this ready for, is so we can use those test boards in this card cage. Okay, well there we have it. It's all back together. Now all I want to do is just use these little levers on top here so I can work the boards in and out a few times. I wanted to make sure they lined up okay. That one was the one that had problems, but it's going in. And one thing about deoxit, it's also a lubricant, so it should help lubricate the slots. That one right there is just wanting to be a booger. Some of these are just like the Sega G80, like in Star Trek. Those card cages are the same. Sometimes they can give you a fit. But usually in the Sega G80 card cages, they don't have those copper strips that we cleaned. Instead, they're actually made into the metal. It's not aluminum case, it's a steel case. And if that slot is real tight against the board, and what happens is it corrodes up and starts to rust. And believe it or not, that the little area where the slots fit down in there, it gets so tight that it keeps the board from wanting to go in and out. But that's on the Star Trek G80 card cage. This one you don't have that particular problem because you got those copper wipers, which don't really hold any resistance to it. And they're getting easier already. All right, let me pull one of these out and take a look here. I put right much deoxit down in there, so yeah, look like you're making good contact. That one still has a little problem, but it's going in, so. Okay, well, now all I'm going to have to do is pull all these cards back out. I'll turn it upside down and I'll let that deoxit run out of the slots down there, because I'm sure this stuff is conductive, so we don't want to leave it in there. It should evaporate, and so we'll go ahead and let it evaporate out. And after it dries out, I'll come back tomorrow and I'll put the boards back in. Now these boards, this board set here is one of my spare board sets, and all these boards have been tested. They all work except for the pattern board has a slight problem. But the game still works with the pattern board, but the pattern board is causing some issues with the graphics on the screen sort of sometimes get doubled up or whatever. So, but you know, to test it, it should work good to test. And then when we get into the next video where we're going to be testing the test boards, well, one of those boards you're supposed to be able to test the pattern board. So we're going to find out if it works and whether it's going to be any help to figure out what's wrong with the pattern board. And also you can test the RAMs and the RAM cards. So we're going to go through all that and evaluate the cards and see how all that works. So if you want to see that, be sure to subscribe to the channel. That way when I do finish all this and get the video edited and post it, you'll be notified as soon as the video is released. And that way you won't miss it. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and now pull these boards out. And those wipers are nice and tight. They feel good. All right. All right. Now we'll just let it air dry. And tomorrow I'll come back and I'll put the boards back in. I'll hook up the Gorf game and disconnect the wiring harness from the board set in the game and hook it up to this cage. And we'll power it up and we'll find out what kind of a job we did on this card cage. Okay, calm down. I know somebody is yelling and screaming at the screen right now. I forgot something very important. I had to put the cards back in. I didn't tighten up the bottom screws that hold the back plane in. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, with the cage aligned and the cards aligned, ought to be able to just go ahead and tighten these up. Because without these tight, when I take the cards out, this board probably can't wiggle much, but with it being loose, it will have some wiggle in it, and it could get out of alignment. Okay. There we go. Okay, now we're done. Okay, well, I just couldn't wait till tomorrow, so I got a can of compressed air and blew the card edge out, made sure it was dry, and I went ahead and put the card cage, I unplugged the harness from a Gorf, and I plugged the harness in. Here's the power connector where we put the new header pin on. And then, of course, the other connection or the wires to the harness that goes to the game board. So, and to make sure that this is 100% working, the cage, I went ahead and pulled all my good working boards out of the Gorf. So the card cage in the game doesn't have any cards in it, but nothing is hooked to it. So everything is hooked up to the reconditioned card cage, and the original harness is plugged into it. So now we're going to turn the power on and find out if we got a working card cage and a working game. And it looks like we do. We'll just let it cycle through the attract mode here. Make sure everything is looking good. And everything's looking good. Okay, So it looks like we successfully cleaned the card cage and the edge connector. So now we have a working test bed to test the test boards in. So, okay. So this will finish up this video right here. So be sure if you want to see me set up, I still got to make a wiring harness. We're going to, instead of powering this on the game, I'm going to hook up a switcher power supply and use my old DVD player that has a video input as the monitor. And we're going to make this a completely separate test rig that we'll be able to put on the bench over here. And hopefully if it works, we're going to show you how it works. We're going to test some RAM boards. And more importantly, I want to see how the test for the pattern board works, because I do have 3 bad pattern boards. And if this test rig works, hopefully it'll point me in the right direction to fixing those pattern boards. So if you want to see all this, be sure to subscribe to the channel. It doesn't cost you anything. Just hit that subscribe button and go ahead and ring that notification bell. And when I upload the next videos, you'll be notified and you won't miss a thing. So until then, this has just been another arcade fix. Have you had your arcade fix today?